What's an uncommon fact about newsletters that you being in this space, someone who's like, oh my God, email is dead, newsletter is dead, so overcrowded?
It's basically algorithm free. Of course, you Google Gmail inbox. I think it's the most powerful communication channel that you can have.
So, what's a very important statistic with newsletters that is commonly overlooked?
You have an audience, but you don't own that audience. So you educate, inform, or entertain.
What's something that they should be paying attention to, and why? Why is this super important nowadays?
We've seen people make six figures, up over $1 million on quite small email lists. Then you don't need 100,000 subscribers to a newsletter. You probably only need.
What's the one North Star metric I should over-index on and hyper-focus on?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. We have Dylan on today, and I have this joke that I say on every podcast that retention on YouTube is less than 3 minutes. And so I have all my guests plug everything right now, and then we'll link everything and plug you again at the end. But just tell folks quickly what you're working on, where they can reach out, and what's the best way to get in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Dylan, like Abby said here, and sorry, I should say, is it Abby or Abhinav, or what do you like to go
Abby.
by?
Abby's good.
Abby,
Abby's
Abby.
good.
Okay.
Both are good. Yeah.
So yeah, I read a newsletter called Growth Currency. You can find that at growthcurrency.net. It's a very meta newsletter. It's a newsletter about newsletters. So if you're looking to kind of start, grow, improve, and monetize newsletters, it's a great resource for you. And then I'm also working really closely with a lady out in Pennsylvania named Chanel Basilio, and she writes a Growth in Reverse newsletter, which is a much more popular newsletter than mine, where she does hours and hours of research, where she reverse engineers how some of the biggest newsletter creators in the world have grown to 50,000 subscribers and beyond. So, ton of great free content there as well. So those are kind of the two main places that I'd like to drive people. And then we also have a community for newsletter founders that we can talk to if we want to at some point.
Sweet. And I read almost every issue of Growth in Reverse. I'm not part
Nice.
of the community yet, so maybe I'll have to join after this.
There you
But
go.
one thing I wanted to start with and just sort of distill down for anyone listening is what's an uncommon fact about newsletters that you being in this space have sort of understood the value of, that someone who's like, oh my God, email is dead, newsletter is dead, so overcrowded.
hmm
What's something that they should be paying attention to, and why? Why is this super important nowadays?
Well, I think if you are somebody who's kind of in the mindset of newsletters are pointless and email is dead and all that sort of thing, I would just point you towards what's happening with social media and the algorithm changes that constantly happen day after day. The threats that can happen to a platform like TikTok, all of that stuff where you have an audience but you don't own that audience. So what you can do with a newsletter with email is you can deplatform people, take them from all of these rented platforms. I'm sure people have talked about this on your podcast before, or you've heard it talked about, but um, I'm reiterating it because it's so important. So taking those people off those platforms and putting them onto your email list where you have that one-on-one communication with them. It's basically algorithm free. Of course, you can argue that Google, Gmail inbox, Outlook, Apple Mail all have some form of algorithm in their email client built in, but really it's I just think it's the most powerful communication channel that you can have with people who you want to get your message to and eventually potentially become customers of yours.
What's a very important statistic with newsletters that is commonly overlooked? If I had to keep one North
Hmm.
Star, I'm a founder listening to this who's starting a newsletter. What's the one North Star metric I should over-index on and hyper-focus on?
That's a good question. So a few come to mind. So one is subscriber count. A lot of people like to lean on that and kind of be like, "Oh, I've got X amount of subscribers." And I just mentioned in the intro that Chanel she reverse engineers newsletters that have 50,000 subscribers or more. So that's kind of a benchmark, what we perceive as success. But really, we've seen people make six figures, up over $1 million on quite small email lists. So it really does depend what kind of email or newsletter you are wanting to publish. So if you're publishing something that's more ads and sponsorship based, where you kind of need a lot of eyeballs because you're selling impressions, then size does matter to some degree. But if you are a founder who is trying to get more users, at least free trial signups, that kind of thing, then you don't need 100,000 subscribers to a newsletter. You probably only need to start like maybe 1,000, and you can convert 10% of those to try your product and grow from there. So I think vanity metrics are they're vanity metrics for a reason. So subscriber count is definitely one of them. And then another one would be, in my opinion, open rate, just because it's really tough to actually determine what emails are getting opened and which ones aren't. And until our email service providers have a better way of telling us which ones are legitimate clicks from somebody who's opened an email, legitimate opens from somebody who's received your
Versus
email.
phantom opens, right? Is the
Yeah,
I think the term that's used. Yeah.
exactly, for Apple Mail and those types of email clients. So those are kind of the ones that I think are somewhat either overstated or understated, depending on where you're coming from.
Nice. One thing that I've heavily been bullish on for the past year or two is just owning your own distribution.
Hmm.
And I think I haven't done the best job of that with the podcast because I don't push anyone towards a newsletter. So I have a newsletter set up. I stopped writing it after December. So I got to at some point pick it back up and try to keep growing that. But I do agree that understanding who your audience is gives you so much power and leverage over how to better serve them. Whether you're a indie hacker who wants to build products to sell, or you're a B2B SaaS founder and you're trying to figure out customers to target and how to and what do they want and what feedback. Just owning your distribution is so important.
Hmm.
One thing I wanted to do an exercise for is for anyone listening, let's hypothesize that a founder is building a company, raise some money, but they don't have their own newsletter. Can we talk through some like tactics, tips, tricks? Maybe we mention a sample tech stack on here's the quickest way to get up, how to route them, how to start capturing email and capturing subscribers. Can we go through like this hypothetical scenario of like
Sure.
how can someone start right now today launching a newsletter and sort of working towards building that brand? And maybe a follow-on question is sometimes, like, I have a newsletter associated to the podcast.
Hmm.
Initially, I was doing recaps and then I would just put, like, a hey, here's stuff I'm working on. I feel like switching that around and being like, hey, here's everything I am doing. Part of that is the podcast, right? So, like, just to give you a frame of reference of like personal brand versus company brand,
Hmm.
while we're talking through this scenario, what are some ways and people can practice what to write about, what resonates, how to sort of start capturing that audience? Because you have to provide some value. People aren't going to just sign up for any reason.
That's right.
But we'll pick it up from wherever you think makes sense, and we'll go through that and I'll ask questions.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start with content, because I do think that's kind of the most important part, because nobody's gonna subscribe or at least stay subscribed if your content
Yeah,
sucks, if it's boring.
yeah,
So I feel as though, and people will have different kind of frameworks or buckets that they'll play with. But for me, it's like someone's going to subscribe to your newsletter because it's going to educate them, it's going to keep them informed, or it's going to entertain them. So those are kind of
I like that.
the three sort of main pillars. Other people would argue that you could include like it's going to make them money or save them money. Those other buckets as well. Chanel, who I've mentioned already, she has a great talk that she did at the newsletter marketing summit back in February, where she talks about IV content, insanely valuable content. And she's got about 5 buckets. I would argue that you could probably boil those down into the educate, inform, or entertain as well. So that's the first thing. Determine what you need or what you think you can provide your audience,
Yeah,
whether you're going to do one of those three things, and then how you're going to approach it, or are you going to combine a few of those. So I would say that if you are publishing a newsletter that is going to support, say, a SaaS product or maybe a productized service type of business, you probably aren't going to necessarily keep people informed, so to speak, because that's, to me, that's more of a daily newsletter, current events, morning brew, the
yeah,
hustle, that type of a
yeah,
newsletter. You're probably going to want to educate people more on the industry, the niche, sort of the subject matter that your service or tool provides, and then obviously plug in where it fits your tool, right? And lots of businesses are doing this, so it's probably not exactly a new concept to people, but that's kind of how I go about it. And then if you can infuse some personality in there, to make it feel like it's actually coming from a person, not from a robot or just kind of like a talking head, then that's even better.
you said infuse some of sort of what you're working on in this content, right? Like, so what you said is educate, inform, or entertain, right? As
Hmm.
in three pillars to think about. And maybe there's focused on one, but some of the others sprinkled in, right?
Yeah.
Very contextual to like what you're trying to build and go on, right?
Hmm.
While you're doing that, what's your opinion on overselling versus underselling versus subtly placing sort of what your service, right? Because I think, and again, this is an assumption, I want to say consumers really want, they don't want to be sold to, even though you're marketing to them and like subtly selling to them.
Yeah.
My assumption is that most consumers, if you do a blanket ad, like here's my service on my newsletter, it sort of puts people off. So,
Hmm.
how do you think about organically positioning that? When's the right time to start introducing that? Is that day one? Is that day 10? Is that after you have 1,000? Do you have any opinions on how someone should think about that?
Yeah, I do think it's really nuanced. So it will probably depend on the price point of your product that you're selling. Is it a $10 impulse buy, or is it $1,000 not so impulse buy, or 5,000? Right. So that's one thing. So you need to keep that in mind. If it's something that can be, um, I guess, sold to, like, a pitched effectively, like, this is a, you signed up to my newsletter because you wanted to solve this problem. I've got the $19.99 solution for you. Here it is. Here's a 15% discount if you buy it today, kind of thing. Like, that's kind of an e-commerce sort of play, but that is something that you could do. Personally, I like to um, not talk about that sort of thing in the beginning. I'd rather have you kind of more hooked on the content and the value that the newsletter provides. So Justin Welsh, who you may be familiar with, he, way back in the day, before he was charging anything for courses, he was just on LinkedIn and he was just giving you like all of the goods. Like, he was saying exactly what he did. He was giving it away for free, all of it. And so his whole theory, or his motto, was essentially give, 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 give. And then once you've built up so much trust and this almost like relationship equity with your audience, then you can ask, and they'll be that much more willing to reciprocate and purchase what you're offering, especially if you've given so much away for free. So that's kind of the mindset that I like to take. That being said, not everybody has that kind of time, or are maybe in a bit of a tighter cash flow sort of situation where they need to start building some revenue right off the bat. But you can also do that with sponsorships and advertisements, so you can kind of backfill a little bit of that revenue before you really start to pitch your product. But it's really a comfort thing. It's a, how urgent is your solution? Is it a vitamin versus a painkiller, right? What kind of product or service are you offering? Is it something people need right now, or can they wait on? They're going to need to be nurtured a lot more. So it's definitely nuanced.
So, I like that you mentioned sponsorship as well, right? How should someone think about targeting that, building that flywheel and that engine? Because not everyone knows how to sell themselves and sell their
Hmm.
sponsorship. Is there a certain level after which it makes sense? Because to your point, you got to provide value, you got to provide sort of this place for people to come back to. Like, there has to be something they resonate with.
Hmm.
At what point do you think it makes sense to start approaching maybe sponsorship or just selling your own stuff? Or do you think there's some like baseline metric to think about? I know it's really hard to say like after 500 subscribers you do this, because
Yeah.
an audience could be valuable even at 10 or 20 based on what the audience is.
Yep.
But how do you think about that framework? How should someone think about, okay, it feels like I'm in a good place, writing week over week, getting 50, 60% open rates. Maybe now I start trickling in.
Yep. Yeah. I think some people say 1,000, subscribers, for example, is a good place to start. I got my first ad. This is back in like late 2021, but that would have been like 600 subscribers, and it was like a $25 ad spot. So um, it's not exactly going to drive extreme revenue for you, but there's other ways to go about building your audience a little bit faster if you want to run kind of some paid ads, or do some paid recommendations, that kind of thing, where you can both. Used to work at Sparkloop, so that was what we did. We supplied the marketplace for people who wanted to get in front of newsletter subscribers, or who wanted to basically sell their, for lack of a better term, their recommendations widget, sell the spots on there to new people. So if you want to do paid ads, you could scale faster. Then you can monetize quicker with ads and that sort of thing, and sponsorships. But really, it's a challenging thing to get an audience that is both engaged, ready to click on an ad, and be sizable enough that a sponsor is going to want to be part of that ad. Now, there's a gentleman named Justin Moore, who wrote a book called Sponsor Magnet, and he's been doing brand sponsorships
It's somewhere
for
right there, but yeah.
there. There you go. Yeah, so you're familiar. Yeah, so if your audience isn't though, he's kind of the goat, if you will, on brand sponsorships. He's been doing for like over a decade. Him and his wife have made millions of dollars with brand sponsorships, and so he's got a really robust system on how to do this, how to like basically prospect, pitch, negotiate, and land brand deals with sponsors. So you could take a page out of his playbook, and if you do, you'll probably it'll take a bit more time, but it's kind of that heavy lifting thing with a longer term payoff. So that's one way you could go about it. The other way is to do it on your own, or potentially find a salesperson who you can split some commission with to get brands in. But then, even if you get a brand, you have to get the copy written, the ad written, and then you need to actually get clicks and show some traction that their ad is not going to waste, that they're actually going to get some conversions from it. So there's a lot of things at play here. So it is a challenging way to grow revenue, but it is something that could be approached if you had the right means and the right strategy to go about it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And going back to the initial prompt of I'm a founder, I want to
Hmm.
start building my newsletter. How can I get started today? What do I need? If you have tool recommendations, site recommendations, how do we go about that? How does someone go about doing this?
Yeah, I the beautiful thing, especially nowadays, is there's a number of platforms that you can kind of choose to use that kind of are almost turnkey, where you only need to, if you want to go really bare bones, you just have to come with a name, maybe a brand, a logo, and then start writing and publishing. So uh, ConvertKit, or Kit is now it's referred to, is one, Beehive's another, Substack's another. Those are kind of the big three that I look to when I think of a quick start to get up and running. And the nice thing with all three of those is they have this built-in recommendations referral network that you can start getting more subscribers with, and also potentially earning revenue with. Substack you can't earn revenue with yet, but you can at least grow your newsletter with recommendations there. So I would encourage you to check out one of those three, or do your due diligence and see which one fits best for you. Most of them have a paid. Substack is free, but most of them have a paid and a free option as well. So that's the first thing I do. But then again, you need to obviously think about the content, how frequently you're going to publish, and are you going to write this as a brand, as your company, or are you going to write it from more of a personal brand stance? Is it going to be your face, your name, and your face? So uh, I would lean to name and face, because people resonate more with people than they do big company, faceless companies and logos. So those are just a few of the things that I would think about to begin with, and then we can kind of go anywhere from there.
Yeah. So one thing I'd like to mention there is another key thing to know is if you're going to start, commit to a certain number of editions before you give up, right?
Yeah.
So like with the podcast, I was like, hey, I'm going to do at least 10 episodes. And my stretch goal was let me do 25 before I decide if I want to do this or not, right?
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy the conversation part of it. What I've realized is I don't like the post production part of it. So I have a team to do that, but again, the team costs money, so there's trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I started the newsletter. I did it for maybe 11, 12 weeks, the one associated to the podcast. And then I was just like, I'm traveling. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. And 4 months later, I haven't done it.
Hmm.
So that's one thing I'd say is that understand the value of what you're building. Understand that this is a long play. Building a list is super valuable. If you have a list of people, it can be really valuable.
Yeah.
But you got to stick to it. You got to provide value. You got to make the list of value. People aren't just going to show up on your doorstep and
Hmm.
like, hey, sell me something, right?
That's right.
So I feel like understanding why you're in it, understand if you like it or not. If you don't like writing a newsletter, maybe a newsletter isn't the way to build the audience, but
Hmm.
you got to try to figure it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think figure out, I like what you said, like you decided for podcasting you're going to give it a certain amount of tries before you give up. I would also kind of, before you do that, to determine like, okay, what do I want to accomplish in that time? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, again, a vanity metric like number of subscribers. I would go more with like an output, like you've written this many times. um are you like you said, are you enjoying it? Are you actually getting a little bit of feedback from it? Like, is there some sign or signal that this is something that is worthwhile doing? And so figure out kind of what that might be. So with mine, I did with growth currency when I first started in January 2021. I was like, I'm going to do 100 weekly editions before I give up. And so I set that goal, and then I was like, "Oh, that's about 2 years." So I, I I'm in this for the long haul. And I took one break after 1 year, just a 1 week break. I took a week off. It was my birthday. I'm like, I'm just going to take the week off, and then that was the only break I took until I hit 100. So it
Nice.
was it was something I kind of had to like force myself to kind of do, right? Like otherwise I probably would have given up a little bit sooner, but I really was dedicated to that number. And I knew that if I had done that, I'd just be that much more further ahead than if I didn't, right? So the old, cliche of if you plant the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago and the second best time is now. And I didn't want to be the person who regretted not planting 20 years ago. So I started, and I've gone through a bunch of iterations of the newsletter, and I've culled the list, and it's not nearly as big as I'd like it to be, but it's more than it would be if I had just started today. So I don't think it's anything that you'll regret.
Nice. I like that.
Hmm.
And so now that they've picked a platform, they've figured out sort of maybe the topic to start with, what's next? How does someone start putting this out there? Are there channels you recommend? Do you recommend going social first, organic first, maybe try some paid? How should
Hmm.
someone think about sort of starting to capture that? And then if you want to get into like potential strategies of like lead magnet, all that stuff, we can go there, but
Sure.
feel free to take that wherever. Give me thoughts.
Yep. No worries. So the first place I would go would be probably social media, like leverage those algorithms. I know I spoke about earlier about them being kind of scary. And yes, just to build an audience with no way to capture that audience, it is scary, but that's a great, quote unquote, free way to
Yeah.
get eyeballs on your content and get conversions from social platform over to your newsletter. So that is where I would start because it's simple, easy, free. I shouldn't say it's easy because you have to actually write good content that people
Yeah. Yeah.
will read. Right, that's the caveat, of course. But let's say you are good at that. That is a good place to start. You can then start looking at doing things like this, going on different podcasts, doing guest posts, doing articles on other platforms too. Like you could, even if let's say you're writing a Kit or Beehive newsletter, you can still go on Substack, start an account there, publish a post, not necessarily mail it out to an email list, but publish a post there, use Substack notes, still point people to a different
Yeah.
landing page to subscribe. Like you don't, just because you're not using that platform to send an email doesn't mean you can't use the platform to promote it, right? So that's something else you could do. We are really big right now in the Growth in Reverse Pro community, doing cross promotions and collaborations. So working with other
Nice.
people in similar niches or adjacent industries, niches, categories, whatever word you want to choose, and working with them to, write a guest post for them or do a cross promotion with them, where you both get promoted in each other's newsletter. So that's another
Nice.
way you can go about it. Yeah, there's lots of different paths to go down, and you could, again, you mentioned lead magnets. That's another way we could go down too.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to acquire new readers and subscribers?
Writing a good social post, having somebody click on that, read it, and be compelled enough to click through to a landing page and subscribe. You know that reader is going to be mostly, if not quite
Very high
interested.
intent.
Yes, exactly.
Very
Great
high
word.
intent.
Yes,
Yeah.
very high intent. Yeah, exactly. Another one would be a cross promotion as well. So if you are featured in somebody else's newsletter, hey, Dylan writes about a newsletter about newsletters. It's great. I learned this from him. He always provides great insights and commentary on the newsletter space. And you get a subscriber from there. One, they're already reading a newsletter, so you know that their inbox has newsletters coming to it, and they're opening them and reading them. So that's another signal of high intent. And you can rely on those subscribers typically if you can engage them, to be more engaged if you're a good
Yeah.
writer. So those are kind of my two favorite.
Yeah.
I have not dabbled much with paid. I've done a little bit. I find those subscribers typically are, where, say, a subscriber from LinkedIn might be like a 7 or 8 out of 10 in terms of a kind of a quality
Yeah.
rating. I'd say those are threes, sometimes 4 or 5s, but they're definitely lower on the quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only caveat I would say there is, so I live in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Right.
I started a local newsletter here, and I wanted to see, okay, does this work?
Hmm.
So I went to Facebook ads. I looked at Morning Brew's oldest running ad, took it to ChatGPT, verbatim asked it to copy the ad,
Yeah.
just for Fort Smith Weekly as the name of the newsletter. Everything else ditto same. Just I changed the number because I think their thing has 4 million readers. I just changed it to 100 readers.
Nice.
$10 a day. I was getting I get subscribers anywhere from 60 cents a subscriber to like 1.3. Um I got like 20, 30 subscribers even before I sent the first one out.
Nice. And that's
So
great.
just to your point of like the reason I went that approach is I wanted to see some traction on the first one I sent out, and I
Hmm.
wanted someone to open it, right?
Yeah.
Versus if I just started and I have like my friends and family, like 5 people, like it's not as much validation. So that kept me going. And then the paid worked, and then I synced the Beehive back to the Facebook ad account, and then it started working even better. And I just cap it at 10, $20 a day right now. But it seems to be getting me 15 plus subscribers that are all local to the Fort Smith area,
Hmm. Hmm.
which has been getting me 60+% open rate. So I'm pretty happy with that. But again, I was traveling for 2 weeks, so I just didn't send one out for 2 weeks.
Right.
To the like I did 5 weeks, I took a 2 week break. I did a week, then I missed another week, and then now that's this week. So you have to be super consistent and um what's the word I'm looking for? Not patient, but like you gotta be like you gotta understand what you're getting into, and like if you're not willing to commit to it, it's probably not worth the time of even setting it up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you can get it to the point where if you get a good structure and process in place where you can hire people out to build it,
Yeah,
as long as you get the cash flow going and stuff. But no, a local newsletter is a great example of where paid ads actually are really good. And you can
yeah,
target super local, really geographically focused.
yeah.
And I think that is a definite kind of exception to the rule. There's obviously some others as well. Like I know both the Hustle and the Morning Brew back in the day were just growing. They're dumping tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars a month into Facebook
On
ads,
Facebook ads,
right?
yeah.
So like it can work and it can get you the eyeballs for sure. That's the big media game play that they're going with, where they're charging, you know, thousands and thousands for ad sponsorships every day. So that makes sense on their end. For somebody who's just starting out, it might not quite make
100%,
sense. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And to your, it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day. I was like, at this point, I'm just trying to get enough sponsorship so I can just pump money back into Facebook ads because I just
Right.
don't want to burn my own cash for Facebook ads right now. But to your point, if I'm able to get a couple subscribers, like a couple paid spots, then I'll just like dump it right back into Facebook ads, right? Because
Hmm.
it's like sheer ROI for me at that point.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a good way to go about it. I've heard. Like a guy named Michael Hoke, writes Hoax
Yeah,
News, I believe it's
it's
called.
funny. Every name you're saying, I know, and in my mind, that just tells me I consume too much content.
Yeah, right.
Like, I feel like there's maybe very few names you could take in this space in general that I may not have heard or not subscribed to.
Hmm.
It dumbfounds me that I know all these names. Like, I
That's
shouldn't, like, because this is not my space, but just,
that's
um,
hilarious. It's
yeah,
the zeitgeist that's all just kind of floating around.
yeah.
But
What about Michael Oak's
well, I was going to
newsletter?
say, yeah, he was on when I was working at Spark Loop. I didn't interview him, but our founder interviewed him for the podcast, and I wrote up about that interview, and he was basically like, I think people should operate a newsletter like a startup. So don't take any profit off the top, cover your expenses, yes, but then put every bit of profit after your expenses are paid back into growth. So that is definitely one mentality to go about it. If kind of growth is your main objective, which it's most people's objectives, but some people's objective is more like, no, I want to create a really, really high quality content piece of or high quality piece of content, that being the newsletter, and then it by virtue of it being so high quality, it's going to grow on its own. So kind of like,
Yeah,
you've heard of content led or product led growth. This is like content
yeah,
led growth. And that's kind of how Chanel grew a lot in the beginning. She was on social media a decent amount with her growth in reverse newsletter promoting it, but really people were sharing it because nobody was writing this content or spending this many hours deep diving into how these people were growing newsletters. So the content really, by virtue of how deep and how good a quality it um, was making it share worthy and getting it out there. So yeah, there's different ways to go about it. I can't remember exactly the rabbit hole I was going down there, but Mike Hauk, he was definitely focused on growth and putting all the money back into it. And I've heard other people do the same thing.
What's your take on picking up other systems that work? So like I know I've read Growth in Reverse a lot of like, hey, how did this person grow? Here's a tactic, here's a hack, here's a growth technique.
Hmm.
I was reading I forget her name. I think she rebought her company Best Self or Best Self Co. Or
Mm.
I'm forgetting the name of the operator, but there was I'm pretty sure there was a Growth in Reverse article where she talks about the system she built that's purely Claude project based that helps her write every newsletter in 45 minutes. So like there's an SOP, there's a structure, there's a format. I could be confusing with someone else, but that um that just approach of like, oh, I was reading and I'm like, okay, let me see what I can pick up from here. I should be able to pull it up. But just like that approach of like how do you think about leveraging other techniques and other tactics and like what to pick and choose because everyone's audience is different. I feel like there's so much content out there that
Hmm.
initially it was really easy for me to get lost into the oh yeah, I'm just gonna like keep reading and reading and reading and one day it's gonna hit me. But
Yeah.
what really matters is you gotta just start. So
Yep.
how do you think about sort of that approach of what to leverage, what not to leverage from other creators and other.
Yeah. I think it's very personal. So from my perspective, when I'm reading this kind of content about tips, growth hacks, what people did, case studies, and that sort of thing, if I could see myself actually doing it, then I will potentially give it a try. Like if it's something that I'm like, hey, that's actionable, that doesn't look like it's going to take too much time or too much capital to do, or I have the right amount of time or capital to sink into it, then I'll give it a shot. And you have to know yourself a little bit too, because in the beginning you might be naive about how much work something might be, or maybe how willing you are to spend the time to kind of get it right. And I've made that mistake in the past too, where I thought, oh, I could definitely I've got time, I've got the energy and the motivation to do this. When in truth, after X amount of time, I was just kind of like, never mind. I guess I don't. So you do have to know yourself a bit. But I think for me, it's like if I see something that's worked for somebody and I could see, I guess I just feel like, yeah, I could do that. I'm going to do that. It's just like one of those things where I'm reading it. I'm like, that's either going to hit, like I can do that, or I can't. Um, and I don't know, really know a better way of going about it than just really discerning kind of seeing what other people are doing, really thinking about how much time and effort it's going to take, and if you're willing to put that time and effort into it. Like we had interviewed a guy who was doing Reddit, like he was growing his newsletter almost strictly with Reddit, and at first I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty feasible." And I started playing around with Reddit, and it didn't take long for me to realize I do not want to be here. I do not want to spend the time commenting in all these posts and doing the whole sort of like, "Oh, I found this newsletter that has a great answer to this," and it being your own newsletter. Like, I just didn't want to play that game, so I kind of dropped that pretty fast. But some people might love sitting on Reddit for 4, 5, 6 hours a day and just doing that. So you really have to know yourself and what you're willing to put in, basically your own personal ROI on it. Figure out what that
100%.
is.
Yeah. And I think to the point of the sort of what we've been mentioning before as well is understand the medium. Newsletter is a writing medium.
Mhm.
Podcasting is talking. I could talk for hours,
Yeah.
but if you ask me to write, it took me 3 hours yesterday. And my local newsletter is pretty easy. It's just events, news around town, some fact, Fortunate a super. Like it's pretty. Like I would say it's pretty low. What's the word I'm looking? Like it doesn't need a lot of brain power to write.
Yeah,
Is
it's
what I'm
low
saying. It's
lift.
just like yeah, it's low lift.
Yeah.
But even that took me 3 hours of like constantly getting distracted doing something else. Like no, let me because I don't want to miss this week because I've
Mhm.
already missed 3 weeks out of, and I'm only 10 weeks in, so it's kind of not a good score to be on.
Yeah.
But you got to understand why are you doing it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? You know, Ethan Brooks, he has the Austin
Mhm.
Business Review,
Yeah.
and so I met him when in my last trip to Austin last week, and you know, Wednesday's his writing day. I want to say Wednesday is his writing day. Like he just sits on Wednesday 8 hours, takes him to write his edition for Thursday. Like
Mm.
that's a solid 8, 10 hour effort when he's been curating content the whole week to then help write the newsletter.
Right.
But to someone who's been writing for 4 or 5 years, I don't know, he's been writing maybe longer. It makes sense, right? It's second nature. But how do you also then think about building up the format to where it's not a burden? It's like, oh, I enjoy this. Okay, let me add a new section.
Hmm.
Hey, that section's not working. Constantly add feedback. And
Yeah.
so I think there's just to your point, understanding why you're doing this and how you can make it like a fun task and not a chore
Yeah.
is super important.
Totally. I think you do need to iterate and see what's working and what's not. If a certain section is never getting any clicks or anything beyond that kind of baseline of clicks that, you got the auto opens and the auto clicks, then yeah, it's time to maybe experiment a little bit. What I did with my newsletter in the beginning to make it easier for me, because I was curating a lot of links. At first I was like, oh, I only have like 4 links this week. Last week I had 7. Like, I got to make this more structured. So I changed it to have 4 categories. So the 4 categories were content or a link that was going to help you start a newsletter, one that was going to help you grow a newsletter, one that was going to help you like optimize, improve a newsletter, and then one that was going to help you monetize your newsletter. So start, grow, optimize, slash improve, and monetize. And so I was like, okay, that's a nice easy format that I can follow. That I know I need to find, or I just need to find 4 links, 4 pieces of content that would work in that
I like
case,
that.
and it made it a lot easier. I didn't have to kind of beat my head against a wall trying to figure out how many links I should put in, or that sort of thing. So creating those formats and those content structures will definitely help build out a process, and will help with creating it. It's going to be painful at first because you got to figure all that out. But once you get into the rhythm in the system, and you know what sections you like doing and which ones are getting engagement and people are replying to your newsletter about, those are the ones you need to double down on too.
I like that. And then what's sort of your take on switching it up with getting people to come and guest post for you? Is
Mm.
there a certain time that makes sense or not? Like I know Lenny's been doing this in the product space.
Hmm.
Now Lenny's sort of
The goat.
way up there in terms of like the newsletter operator, so it's like different for him.
Yeah.
But I've been toying with the idea of like not for the local, for the podcast one of like, should I maybe ask potential podcast guests to like collab on me on an idea and just like
Yeah. Why
distill
not?
down into something, maybe do a framework? How do you pick and choose that? Because are people open to writing on your newsletter? Do they want to own the content? Do you own the content? Like I've had some of these discussions and like becomes murky. Maybe they're
Hmm.
just not the right people to partner with. But how do you think about guest posting onto your newsletter versus you guest posting other places?
Yeah, I think you have to approach it with a very open mind, and open that some people are going to want to either own the content or get paid or whatever it might be, and some won't. So you have to know what you're comfortable with and what you're willing to do when it comes to that, and what you're not. So, for example, I just posted an article in my newsletter last week that was a guest post from somebody else, and I'm in the middle of writing a post for his newsletter. So we're doing basically a cross promotion guest post. So the
And do you plug
content.
each other in that?
Do what? Sorry.
Do you plug each other when you're doing the guest post?
Yeah, absolutely. So I introed the article basically saying, "Hey, this week's post is written by my friend Kyle. He writes this newsletter called Creator Glue, I believe it's called, and he writes a lot about newsletters. He works at Kit, so he's got a lot of knowledge on the topic. So you might find this valuable. Since my newsletter is about newsletters, it was pretty good. So I basically pasted just the first kind of intro and just like the first sort of like a teaser, basically, of the article, and then I linked off to his website. So he was leveraging my audience, and he got some of the traffic, and hopefully I haven't actually talked to him yet, but hopefully he got a few new subscribers from it. And then ideally we'll do the same thing when my
Yeah.
article's done.
Nice, pretty cool. I
Yeah.
like that. And then how do you think about just getting feedback from your newsletter subscribers? So
Ask them.
one thing I did on the just ask them.
I mean, sometimes you just have to be straight up and be like, "Hey, what about my newsletter sucks?" Or "What did you think about this?" Like, make it really easy to figure out what the answer is. So don't leave it super open ended, um, and just be straight up and blunt. And I think I don't know, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that is it can be that simple as just like literally like, "Hey, I want feedback, but no one's giving me feedback." It's like, "Well, have you asked them?" "No, I haven't." Well, you maybe start with that.
So what I did was after I got 100 subscribers, I
Mhm,
added a personalization survey. So as soon as you subscribe, you get the survey.
mhm.
Surprisingly, I have a 90% completion rate on
Whew.
that survey
How many questions
after
are on it?
people subscribe. 10.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Name, not name. What do you want to see in the newsletter? So I have like local events, news, whatever, like you select.
Yeah.
Um, income range, your neighborhood, whether you own or rent your home, whether your kids live with you or not. One or two like more just task questions. And then what's your favorite place in Fort Smith? And then where do you go to shop in Fort Smith?
Wow.
And 90% of people are feeling, and it just dumbfounds me that because it's optional, it's completely optional.
Yeah.
And then once you fill out the survey, I have a thing saying, hey, every month I'll select one person and give them a $50 gift card to my favorite coffee shop in town.
Nice. So do
But
you
that's
incentive
after, that's not even before.
so you don't even incentivize filling out the survey with that? Wow. I mean, maybe
And
you
it's
can't
just
even
dumbfounding me that everyone's filling it out. Only one person has gone on Facebook on the ad and said, because my Facebook is just a name, there's no photos. Same with Insta, it's just a name
Mhm.
for the Facebook business, the business account. And he's like, I'm sorry, you're asking for too much information. I'm like, it's optional. You don't have to fill it out. You
Yeah.
can still subscribe.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming just because it's a slightly older audience, maybe they interpret it differently, but it dumbfounds me on how many people are filling it out because what I want to do with that is go to advertisers and be like, hey, like here's, and then every week I'm experimenting with like in today's it was like, hey, how do you landscape?
Mhm.
And like, do you need help with landscaping?
Mhm.
And I was just trying to gauge. I didn't get a lot of clicks there, like maybe 10 clicks or whatever on that poll within the email,
Yeah.
but I think it's working out. One person replied saying, thank you for doing this. I'm a new subscriber. I was like, okay. I
Nice.
mean, that's some validation that
Absolutely.
but yeah, to your point of just like I've done this. I haven't actually done a survey post email like, hey, how am I doing? What's good? What's bad?
Mhm.
That's before you sign up. So maybe once I do like 20, 25 editions, maybe I'll do a survey and like send something out or something. But response rates have been harder with whatever I send out as part of the email of like, hey, fill this out and help me.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, we're all subscribed to more newsletters now than we ever have been, right?
Yeah,
One thing you could look at doing, and something I've seen other people do, is basically do like after 30 days, basically build a sequence. And it's a simple
got it.
30, you've been subscribed for 30 days. How are you liking the newsletter so far? If you could just answer this quick question or click on this poll or get some kind of
Signal.
data, yeah, signal data, whatever you need back from them, then everybody gets it as long as they've not unsubscribed yet. And
Yeah,
that's kind of a way you don't have to really think about it, and people are just going to start getting it. Of course, you want
nice.
to
I will
monitor
probably
the
set this.
yeah,
I'll
set
probably
that
set
up.
up a sequence. Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be a bad way to go about it. And then you can tweak it and modify it if people aren't answering it or you're not getting great data from it.
So far, I only have one unsubscribe, so touch
Hey,
wood, nobody else
man, you're
unsubscribes.
almost batting 1,000. That's pretty good.
Yeah. But yeah, I think shifting gears just a little bit. We talked about building a newsletter. How should a founder build this out? How should they think about this? What's your opinion on building a personal brand versus a company brand versus a thematic brand of like, all these people doing like AI newsletters or AI,
Hmm.
what's up in AI, right? Like, do you have an opinion on what works better for a founder who's trying to, eventually build and sell their product? How should they think about positioning themselves?
That's a good question, and I can't. It's hard for me to speak to that because I'm not a founder. But what I've seen people do is kind of all over the map, right? So, you know, when the most recent example, I guess that comes to mind is Market Briefs, which is a newsletter by a gentleman, Jaspreet Singh. Um,
Yes.
you're familiar with
Winnipeg or
him?
something, right? I know
He,
just Preet Singh. I'm trying to
yeah,
remember where I saw him, but
he has a
again, dumbfounds me that I know
yeah.
this. Anyways,
He started with a YouTube channel called I believe it's Minority Mindset, where he's teaching about finances
Mm,
and stuff like
yes, yes,
that.
yes. He
Yeah,
has a turban, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He has a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
turban.
okay.
Um, and so the reason why he's kind of fresh on the radar is Chanel's going to the newsletter conference geez, in 2 days in New York City. And she's doing like a live deep dive on him and kind of interviewing him at the
Nice.
same time there. So I was reviewing some of his stuff as well. And he has built this YouTube channel that's really like, it's him. It's like him talking about finances and investing and all this stuff, right? But then his newsletters is market briefs, and there's no pictures of him. There's nothing. It's like you wouldn't know that he runs it, right? So he's still driving people with lead magnets and that sort of thing in his YouTube descriptions over to become subscribers to that, because the content overlaps a bit. He talks a lot about what's going on in the markets, in the economy, in real estate, in crypto, in all these different sectors. And he does a really good job of infusing some personality, like we talked about earlier. So he's nailing those two: inform and entertain, right? He's really nailing those two buckets
Nice.
in his newsletter. And then his, I'd say his or sorry, not his website, his YouTube channel is really good at educating. So he's hitting on all fronts, just coming at you in different ways. But he's building the newsletter with a faceless brand, and he's built the YouTube channel with a face. So that's kind of one way you can approach it. But if you
Nice.
are
I
kind of
like that.
just, yeah, I think it's smart. And whether it was natural or the way he wanted to do it, maybe he has like some kind of exit strategy for the newsletter that he wants to execute, which is, I think, something maybe you should keep in mind if you're a founder and you do have like a 3 year, 5 year, 2 year, whatever sort of off ramp that you're looking at doing. Then you probably don't want to build too heavily around your name and your face, right? It's going to be a lot harder to sell. So that would be one strong consideration. But I do think, just what I mentioned earlier, that people really gravitate to names and faces and people rather than kind of faceless logos and brands. So definitely keep that in mind.
It's funny you say that. I met a founder, a newsletter operator in Austin who's doing an AI one, pretty big, pretty deep tech AI,
Hmm.
and someone gave him an acquisition offer, but his main channel was Twitter and LinkedIn, and those are attached to his personal name. So the
Mm,
acquisition offer was like, "Hey, you got to give me those two accounts." But he's like, how do I give you my personal LinkedIn account? Like, it makes zero sense. And then the counter offer was like, okay, build me a new LinkedIn and Twitter with similar following and engagement, or else we can't command the same price point. And again,
wow.
to your point of like the sale never ended up going through because the ask was absurd in the sense of like, I need your top of funnel, but your top of funnel is your personal account.
Hmm.
So maybe the argument Twitter you could still give, but like LinkedIn, it's really hard to give away your account if that's your top of funnel.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you want to do like a acquihire kind of thing where,
Yeah,
you're still kind of running your own LinkedIn account, getting paid to do so. But yeah, it's
yeah.
tricky. It's tricky. Something to
Nice.
consider.
Random sidebar, you were mentioning growth in reverse. Do you guys now get access to all these operators and like do a deep dive from within in terms of like, hey, show me your data and your curves? Because I feel like the original couple I got were like from an outside lens of just
Hmm.
looking at research posts here and there, maybe something they post. Is it still that way? Or
Yeah.
because with the growth, have you guys been able to sort of, get a foot in and be like, hey, are you willing to share?
Yeah. So like, let me just rewind, just like give you Cole's Notes version. So Chanel started this
Yeah.
because she found out there was a guy named Mario Gabrielli who was writing this newsletter called, was it Stratechery? No, that's Ben Thompson. Generalist, the Generalist was his newsletter, and she saw a post on Twitter that he's like, "I made $300,000 last year writing this newsletter." And she's like, "What? How'd you do that?" So she just got like went in the weeds and like did a big deep dive on him, and then published it, and then people loved it,
Nice.
and then she just kept going, right? And so
Nice.
it was never interacting with people. I think she said maybe once or twice she's reached out just to confirm some numbers, because there might have been a discrepancy from one post or the other. So
Yeah.
just to confirm numbers. But what she always intended on doing was doing this all as like kind of like secondary research, never like primary,
Makes
interviewing
sense.
the person and stuff like that. And so with this interview she's doing on Friday in 2 days, this is one of the first times she's like kind of interviewing somebody as a deep dive, and it's for the conference and stuff like that.
Nice.
But it's always been done uh, not behind the scenes, just as like on a sort of a her own quest to kind of uncover all the data that she can that is on the internet and so on. She's really good
Nice.
at going
How
down rabbit
how big
holes.
is your How big is your guys' team at Growth in Reverse?
Just the two of us. We've got a
Oh,
contractor who
nice.
helps us with some podcast stuff. But yeah, it's just the two of us, and she takes on a large brunt of a lot of the stuff. So
It's
I'm
pretty
just
cool.
kind
I
of
mean,
I'm supporting.
pretty big content engine for just like two people putting it
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, it's a decent amount of work. But she works hard, and she's great to work with. So I'm happy
Nice.
to help.
And how did you end up working with her on that front?
I posted on LinkedIn actually that I had left Sparkloop and with no real fallback plan, except for hopefully relying on my network to find some more work. And she was one of the first people that messaged me saying, "Hey,
Nice.
this feels like a great opportunity to try to work together." So we talked for a bit and started out with just a couple projects, and then one thing led to another, and now I'm kind of helping her more or less full time.
Nice. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to be heading to New York for the conference or
I won't be in New York. I'm on the west coast of Canada, so it's quite a journey for a expensive journey too for a
6, 7 hours? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for a 1 day conference. I'll be at Boise, Idaho in June for the Craft and Commerce
Yeah.
Kit conference, so I'll be there. Chanel will be there as well. That's a 3 or 4 day conference, so that'll be fun. But no, I won't be in New York, unfortunately.
Nice. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just rounding up the newsletter stuff. So, are there any tips or tricks or any like top of mind advice that founders should be thinking about when approaching this space? How should they continue to keep that growth? Like any just top of mind tips there?
Um, I think obviously starting is very key. You've mentioned consistency, right? Being consistent, and then definitely the long-term mindset, like having the idea that this isn't going to be something that's going to blow up overnight unless you pay your way there. And even when you pay your way there, that can have its own risks and drawbacks too.
100%.
So I think kind of formulating a long-term horizon approach to this is really going to be your best bet for success, and knowing that you're building up um, if you will, the 1000 true fans, right? Like trying to kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
focus
yeah.
on that aim of getting that kind of subscriber base, loyalty, and hopefully eventually your user base too, or client base.
Nice. I like that. And then the other last question I had on that is how do you get people added to your newsletter? So like one thing I've been toying around with, I go to a lot of networking events and I meet
Hmm.
people in person. What's the best way for someone in that setting? Because founders are out and about a lot of conferences, whatever. How can you capture and I don't want to use legally, but like properly add them to your list so that it's not like spam? But
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've seen like I
any
used to
thoughts
do
around that?
well, I used to do trade shows for when I was in the corporate world, and we would just do giveaways where you'd give your email address and you enter the giveaway, which was a great way to grow a list, but not a great way to have high retention on
Yeah,
subscribers. So it can be tough. I think um, if there's some kind of incentive that you can offer that is not that kind of quick giveaway, sort of gimmicky sort of offer, then I would definitely talk it up. But if you really have um, a compelling newsletter or a reason to subscribe, or um, that alone should give people reason to subscribe, in my opinion. So Chanel's is like every week I do 40 hours of research deep diving how the top newsletters in the world grow. So you don't have to. Like I do all the research for you. You get it in like a 10-minute read, right? And so that's compelling. So they've talked about podcasts having a compelling uh basically reason to listen, right? Like
yeah.
what is it? And so if you have that, that should be, if you can't get people to subscribe when you give them basically your elevator pitch, maybe you need to revise it and and rethink it. But no, I don't really have honestly any other real tips or tricks. If you wanted to have a QR code on the spot and get people to subscribe, maybe promise them you'll just at this conference you'll do like a, I don't know, a 15-minute one-on-one call with them at some point. I don't know, like there's ways you can come up with incentives for people to subscribe on the spot other than a compelling reason why they should read your newsletter. But
Makes sense, yeah.
yeah.
It's funny, I was on a call today, someone was launching a community, and they're like, if you sign up today, you get a free cap or a t-shirt. And
Mm.
I mean, I get it, but sometimes I find it gimmicky where you gotta give people like swag to like get them to do something, which is fine. Like I get it, it has its place.
Hmm.
But to your point of like if you're providing enough value, people will share with the right audience. Like for someone who's sharing just to get something, I feel like more often than not, 50% of those shares or referrals are again lower quality because they're just trying to hit whatever the benchmark in that is,
Oh yeah,
which has its place. But yes,
yeah.
there's a difference in quality of subscriber.
Yeah, if you are going to go that route of giving away swag to get a subscriber, you better make that onboarding experience for that new subscriber like top notch. Like they got to be like addicted to your newsletter when you got to drive it so much value, in my opinion, to really keep them
Yeah,
on it that it's worth the ROI of giving away a cap or whatever that costs you $5 to $8, $10 to create. Is that subscriber worth you? We didn't talk about knowing your numbers for like LTV and that sort of thing, but that's also really important if you're going the paid route or you're giving stuff away. You want to figure out how long are people seeing subscribe, what's the customer lifetime value, and what's my payback period on these subscribers.
I feel like the only reason I didn't cover that is there's so much nuance
Oh
to,
yeah.
like, I know having 100 CFOs is so much more valuable than having
Hmm.
just 1,000 people in Fort Smith who may or may not be retired, right?
Yeah.
There's so much context there. We'll probably find another time to go deeper there. But
Yeah, absolutely.
what can we plug for you? What can people reach out? Where can they find you? And just yeah, plug yourself again,
Yeah.
and we'll link everything. And the editor should be adding infographics, and we'll add a subscribe to your newsletter here. But
Amazing.
yeah,
I'm most active on LinkedIn in terms of social media, so you can find me there. Just my full name. I'll share the link there so you guys can see that if you want to engage there. Then you can check out my newsletter at growthcurrency.net. And then be sure to check out Chanel's as well at Growth in Reverse. Coincidentally, that we both have the word growth in our in our newsletter names, just the way it worked out. But growthinreverse.com. And right now, depending on when this is published, she's running a really interesting experiment where she's publishing 30 days of growth, which is kind of like a pop-up newsletter. So she's sharing like
okay.
one tip tactic a day. It'll be live even after the 30 days are up, but right now it's like I think it's day 8. Um, and so there's about another 21, 3 weeks or so worth of these daily tips that are going out. And so you can find that at 30daysofgrowth.com as well. Or sorry, .co, 30daysofgrowth.co.
I was not 30 with a 30
Yeah,
or
with a 30. Yeah. Yeah,
sweet.
it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. So
Are
it's
you
been
are
going
you
pretty
helping
well.
with that as well?
Yeah. Yep. She's even like she's got a low barrier referral. You know, we just talked about incentives to subscribe. So one of them is like I'll give you just a private podcast feed of me reading these. If you don't have time to read them all yourself, then you can like get the podcast version, if you will, so you can listen while you drive or commute. Um, and so that's one thing that's been working well. And then we have some giveaways as well for people who share with like to write message and Tella and Senja, and I think Justin Moore is giving away to coaching things as well. So incentives to read, just to grow your newsletter from the tips and
Nice.
tricks we're sharing, and then incentives also to share it to win some prizes that are I think would be pretty valuable.
Amazing. I just subscribed to yours as well. So
Beauty.
we will link everything, and hopefully audience found some value here.
Yeah,
But I appreciate your time,
no
and
problem.
I know you have a busy week, but hopefully we'll find time to chat again and do that. But if there's anything else you want to plug or mention or talk about, happy to plug that as well.
Yeah, the only other thing would be our Growth Reverse Pro community for people who are taking newsletters seriously.
Yeah.
We've got about 75 people hanging out
Nice.
every day in
I
a
think I
circle of
know
community
Luis
there.
who's in there.
Oh yeah. He's from Austin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I saw some post of his where he was talking about, I think maybe you broke down one of his newsletters or something.
Oh, we
Or
were
like you
talking.
did a deep dive, yeah.
We were doing some newsletter roasts.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it was. Yeah.
And how much is the community? What's the structure and
Yeah,
what
it's a
platform do you guys use?
we use Circle. It's and it's a application based, but really if you're, growing a newsletter and you didn't just start it yesterday, then you probably will get approved. I believe it's $7.99 for annual membership, and
Nice.
that's the only offering we have. We don't have month to month, just an annual. And hang out with myself, Chanel. We do creator sessions, so just for the community, we bring in
Nice.
people behind the scenes to kind of give us some instruction, some education, that sort of thing, and do these newsletter roasts that and
Nice.
audits that Luis was talking about. Yeah.
Pretty cool. I like that. I like that. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on.